Welcome to another episode of Dynamics Compass, where we interview the specialists so you don't have to figure it out the hard way. Today I've got Steven Goodwin on the podcast as a guest speaker. Steven is Senior Director of Enterprise Apps at Graebel Companies, where he leads the AI and Microsoft Business Application strategy for one of the world's leading global mobility and relocation firms. With over a decade of Microsoft Dynamics experience spanning implementation consulting at RSM and leadership roles at Innospec and Graebel, Steven brings a rare combination of technical depth and strategic vision. He navigated the full lifecycle from rescue mission and platform updates to enterprise-wide AI adoption, making him uniquely qualified to speak to the realities decision makers face every day. He's also the Colorado chapter lead for the Dynamics user group, where he connects professionals and shares insights on enterprise technology trends. So he won't be a stranger to the majority of you. Steven, thanks so much for coming on today.
No problem, Rory. Happy to be here.
Yeah. I'll start with an icebreaker question, just for the people that don't know you too much. Could you share something not a lot of people know about you yet?
Sure. Don't want to give up something too troublesome, but a lot of people know that I've got a young son. He's 8 years old. So we spend a lot of time playing with Lego and building Lego sets.
Oh yeah.
And if anyone ever comes to my home, you'll see Lego sets everywhere. And it tends to be like an escape for me as well, something different to focus on. And I get a lot of
Yeah.
enjoyment also just sitting with him and building things with him. It's a bonding exercise for both of us, but certainly it's an escape from work as well, which is
Yeah.
always welcome.
Yeah. The time that my daughter got a marble run set and we started doing it, I loved it so much as well because
Yeah.
you have to disconnect because you just focus on building, following the steps like an IKEA piece,
Yeah, it's great.
and just spending time with your kids.
I have way more success with Lego than I do with IKEA. Let me put it that way.
Yeah,
DIY is not one of my strong points.
yeah. Do you have like a collection, like collector's items, like the Star Wars set or the whatever
I've
set?
got a few. Yeah, I'm a big Batman fan, so
Oh
I've
yeah,
got like the Batmobiles and things like that, and the Batman cityscape, which is the Gotham cityscape, I should
yeah,
say. But yeah, I love the Batman stuff. It's really cool. I've got a few Star Wars pieces as well.
yeah.
More the older stuff than the newer stuff.
Hmm.
I'm
Yeah,
I'm one of those guys. The original
classic.
trilogy is the only one that really matters.
Yes.
So
Yep.
yeah, I've got some of those things too.
Yeah, that's really cool. Well, thanks for sharing that.
No problem.
Um, all right, you and I have spoken before. There is a lot we could talk about. We'll try and
Yes.
condense a little bit. Um, could you first walk us through, like, you started at Grable, you walked into what sounds like an implementation nightmare, like 8 months post go live and not a single account had been reconciled. Can you paint the picture of what you found on day one and what was actually causing the systems to fail so badly?
Yeah. Long time ago now, and certainly we're in far better space today than we were back then. But I remember, I'll take it back a couple of steps prior to that. I remember being in the interview process and just asking what had they done, how they got to where they got to, and I got the sense then, straight away in that interview process, that there was a lack of real understanding of how this system works,
Hmm.
particularly with the cloud commitments that everyone signs up to with D365 and that whole evergreen approach. They
Yeah,
really didn't have any answers around that. So for me, straight away, I knew that I was dealing with a situation where I could bring in a lot of knowledge immediately.
yeah,
And that's how it proved. Coming in, I'm not going to try and say it was a low bar to scale over. There,
yeah.
there were a lot of challenges. There were an awful lot of challenges. And when I came in December, they'd gone live. I came in December 2019. They went live at some point in April 2019.
Hmm.
And it was very clear that there were significant issues around adoption and training and making sure that people knew what they were doing,
Hmm.
that they were ready for it. That's what I saw straight away. And even just talking to people, it was very, very clear to me that they didn't know how the system worked. They didn't understand why why financial transactions created certain entries. They just didn't know that. So there's a distinct lack of knowledge across the end user group, which causes a lot of these issues.
Yeah.
But digging beneath that, there were further issues beneath that as well. So my view of it at the time was, how did this go live? But we were
Yeah.
already 8 months in. It was You weren't going to turn it off. It was live. It was just not operable.
Yeah.
The procedures were actually fine. It was the knowledge of the procedures and it was the understanding of the procedures and therefore the execution of the procedures that were a real problem. But beneath that, there were a bunch of other issues. So going back again, this was a business-led project. IT were not heavily involved in it.
Mm.
Um, there was a lot of back and forth. I think they started out with the DAX 2012 implementation, and about 2 years in, they made the change to switch over to D365. But a lot of the development had been committed by then, and they ported it over to D365 without real remedial testing of, does the solution still work the same way? Because you're moving
Mm.
from an on-premise base
Yeah.
with a completely different code, well, similar code structure, but more control over the code structure to something that you're not going to have a great deal of control over. So totally different makeup there, and I don't think they did enough real regression testing to say, does this still work the way that we intended to?
Yeah.
Couple that with business pressures, costs were mounting, timeline kept extending. It just got into a situation where there was a very adversarial relationship with the vendor that was created through this process. There were leadership changes in our structure. So different
Mm.
people were trying to have a stab at it and understand, where are we at? How do we get this
Yeah.
live? And just pushing it through. And we ended up actually getting, you always hear like phase one, phase two, phase three. Well, Graebel went live with a phase point 0.5.
Point five.
But I've never heard of it before. But a Graebel point 0.5, with a Graebel phase point 0.5, which basically meant a bunch of functionality was left behind that should have been there as part of the initial go live. But such were the business pressures at the time, such was the length of time that had been taken to get to this point,
Mm-hmm.
they just had to get it live. And they dropped a bunch of functionality, put in a version that was, I say, it could go live, but it wasn't fully operable. And there were
Yeah.
definitely pieces missing at go live that would have been critical to what they needed. In terms of that as well, there was documentation issues. It was just like a complete mess. It really was. Once it went live, they were then in the situation of escalating tickets all over the place. Our
Yeah.
user base didn't know how to do things, so naturally they were asking for support. I think that every day, my colleague told me every day it was like 100 tickets coming into a team of two people who just didn't have the bandwidth to go and deal with this.
No.
And you couple in there the adversarial relationship with the partner, how bad that relationship was at the time,
Yeah.
the fact that nothing was being reconciled, so there were no financial reports, payments weren't going out on time. It was a total mess.
Yeah.
Then you add in
Yeah.
things like, because there was such a drop in the actual functionality that went into the go live, clearly a bunch of business unit leaders were like, well, when are we going to get our processes? When are we going to get the developments that we were promised? Huge
Yeah.
development backlog. And then on top of all that, you've got a complete misunderstanding of how the system operates from a maintenance perspective. So
Yeah.
platform updates, and we all know the early platform updates were not as seamless
Mm-hmm.
as they are today. So we did end up with a couple of platform updates that just went straight into production, no testing or very minimal testing, and breaking processes. So
Yeah. The ones that you did have.
yes. And I remember the first week I started at Graebel, they were doing a platform update, and I think it was either 10.0.6 or 10.0.8. It was that long ago.
Yeah.
And there was a bug in there around certain post and profiles affecting the GL postings. It just went in. It went in and it caused chaos. And we've
Oh
lived with
wow.
that for a couple of months while we waited for the next platform update.
Yeah.
But that tells you that nobody was really looking at it correctly. No one was controlling it. There was no real product ownership or product stewardship. So
You,
confidence was low, really low
you,
when I came in.
you you couldn't have failed in this role. Like
There was,
it
there was
couldn't
that
get any
aspect of it.
worse.
It couldn't get any worse. But what I liked about it, why the opportunity presented, well, it presents itself through a bunch of connections, and someone contacted me and said, "Would you be interested in this?"
Yeah.
And the reason it appealed to me at the time was more because I felt there's a real opportunity to go and grasp something and make it my own. Rebuild the processes. The more I talked to people at Graebel through the process, the more I realized they really don't know what they've got,
Yeah.
and they don't know how to handle it. They don't know how to fix it. So they need help. That was clear. But I could see a world where I could just go and build the whole thing from scratch,
Yeah. And make an
including
impact.
building a team, building processes, getting it right, showing that we can make this world class. So it
Yeah.
was a great opportunity, and one that I'm glad I took. It helped me in so many ways
Yeah.
while I was helping Grable, but and it opened so
Yeah.
many doors, leading to where I was talking to a bunch of folks in the dynamic user group, to user community, I should say, to get some assistance on these things as well. And
Yeah.
that led to greater relationships and eventually meeting you, Rory. So, I
Yeah.
was on the right
Exactly.
path.
The score. Um, well, talk us through that, because everyone who's listened to this horrible story that you just shared, off record, you already shared you were going to need a lot more than two people to fix this. Walk us through the first 6 to 12 months. Like, what were the critical
Yeah.
steps you made to stabilize the operations and rebuild the trust in the system?
Yes. Great question. And certainly there was a lot in there, but I boiled it down to three main areas. Stop the bleeding was area number one.
Yeah.
Area number two is build the foundation for success. So getting that team in place that can help us. And then area three was enhancing the product, because the general perception of the system was that it wasn't ready. It
Yeah.
shouldn't have gone live because it's missing key components that make the business work. So I'll take each in turn, but before then, bunch of things that I did straight away were set some expectations. We need to exit stabilization quickly. That
Hmm.
was priority number one. We've got to get this stable. We've got to get this to a point where it's operable. We've got to make sure that people know what they're doing. And also, as part of the recruitment process, really stress that you need in-house capability. There's no way that you can do this unless you've got people internally who can guide this and really own it. And
Hmm.
I'm glad that the CIO at the time listened to me and supported me on that, because you'll note I mentioned December 2019. Well, guess what happened in February 2020? COVID
COVID.
hit the world. So all of this was in and around COVID, and that brought a complete change to everything, with
Hmm.
everyone working from home. So I was fully supported on all this stuff, which is great, and I'll talk about that in a moment. But my first couple of months were very much getting into the weeds as to why the problem's so bad and how do we fix them, but also meeting with key stakeholders. What are the expectations? And as I mentioned earlier, confidence was rock bottom,
Yeah.
and it was very much we don't believe that this system can work. We don't believe that we've done the right thing. A lot of that kind of discussion with them was about how do we instill confidence? How do we start to build or put the building blocks in place to allow us to continue moving this forward and progressing forward? So my first protocol with them was to develop a plan. What is it that you're looking for? How do we get there? What are the quick wins that I can give you to show that we can do this? So that was where we started from. But going through those three main areas, stop the bleeding was obvious. That part of the
You mean
stabilization
you mean the
process.
money, like bleeding money, or
More so, everything's not working. People are frustrated. Tickets are going through the roof. No one knows what to do. So stop it getting worse. Like,
okay?
how do we prevent this getting? How do we prevent this continuing? How do we get this to a point where people know what they're doing, people can execute, and that we're not going into month 12 of things not being reconciled and no one knowing what a report looks like. How do we stop that? That was
Yeah.
our initial call to action. Money wise, I'd say that the money had dried up way before then, Rory.
Yeah. Yeah.
There was a whole I've spent enough on this and I need to see some results before we invest
Spend
further
more. Yeah.
on the product itself. And given where they found themselves, I don't blame them. Spent an awful lot to get it live. And then if
Hmm.
someone's going to come in and say you need another X million to get this to where it needs to be, that wasn't the message they
No,
wanted to hear.
definitely not.
So that's what our focus was. It was retraining people. It was providing adequate support. If we were dealing with a ticket where we had a resolution, take that opportunity to retrain someone when you talk to them about the resolution. This is how you solve for it. This is the solution we're going to put in play. This is how you can operate better and stop this occurring in the first place.
Yeah.
All those touch points were in there, and my team did it. My team of two did a great job in getting that sorted out in the initial few weeks I was there.
Yeah.
Um, what else was there in there? So building the team was the critical factor here. We had two people. One was a functional consultant who had been brought on full time. And
Okay.
I think he joined the project 3 months before go live. And that was when IT started to get more involved.
Hmm.
So he came in, he did a great job just keeping that financial process moving forward, making sure that we were dealing with reconciliation issues and helping our finance users get to a point of comfortability and ability to execute on processes. The other person was in the QA team. So he came over as a full time support as well, had a kind of technical background mainly, but was learning the functional pieces by working with the other person as well.
Hmm.
So you can see straight away limited knowledge,
Yeah.
of how the product actually works and how to utilize it. But we started to build on that. So straight away, we did redeploy someone else from the business for the IT team into my team who brought a lot of technical knowledge, but also brought a lot of legacy knowledge. Like we'd come
Yeah.
off Oracle to move to D365, and that person was one of the SMEs, I don't know if you want to call it that, on Oracle, so knew the financial processes and
Yeah.
how finance works. So that helped a lot as well. And then I recruited a senior developer to join the team as well because I knew we needed a development arm in the team if we were going to go and succeed. So
Yeah.
the person I brought in was more on that architect level. When I look
Yeah.
at it now, in hindsight, when I look back, the person who came in brought a higher level of thinking around this, but also brought all the expertise of I've done this before. Worked at Blue Horseshoe for many, many years, so
Oh
was
yeah.
fully ingrained in X++ code development and all of the pieces that sit around that. So he was able to help us really build that technical arm of of the team so the company could actually benefit from it.
Yeah.
And the way I approached it was I'm not a technical person, I'm more of a functional person. So I'll focus at this area. I'm letting you loose on the technical side. You build what you think is necessary to get this to the point of where we're going to be successful.
Yeah.
And it worked really well, giving him that freedom to go and build all the ADO pieces out, make sure that we got pipelines, make sure that we got processes, and then start to slowly execute on that was
Yeah.
huge. And it allowed us to split the team in two as well. Focus that person on enhancements, everybody else is on stabilization. And then once we get past stabilization, we then all start working on maintenance and enhancements.
Yeah. Correct me if I'm wrong. You were previous to hiring a developer or architect. Um, you had outsourced the development, I believe. What drove the
Yes.
decision to bring that in-house?
Yeah. I'd say a couple of factors there, Rory. So one of them was obviously the nature of the relationship we had with the implementation partner and how sour that had become.
Yeah.
Our leadership were very much not wanting to contact the vendor and not wanting
Okay.
to work with them.
That bad.
Yeah, it was that bad. So me coming in, I tried to reestablish that and just make sure that we had some form of relationship because we still needed them. We still have a product of theirs that we wanted to utilize and was critical to the business. We couldn't just cut ties and say we're not talking to these guys. So
Yeah.
there was a little bit of recovery on that aspect as well and building relationships. And there was some building of relationships with Microsoft too. Such was the nature of that implementation and how sour things got,
Hmm.
there was a lot of discussion with the Microsoft account team as well as to how do we get success here? Because the feeling from the exec team was that this was a failure and that the product was not going to meet standards.
Yeah.
Totally incorrect perception, but reality is perception for those people.
Yeah.
What they had available to them wasn't meeting standard. So there was a bunch of high level conversations at that point with our account management team. I remember Microsoft coming to site and there was about 6 or 7 of them,
Yeah.
all different account managers and technical managers and all that type of stuff. And we sat around the table and talked through specific challenges and where we needed support. So it got a bit nasty there at some point, but we eventually got through that. And I think having the ability to show that internally we could handle this helped the
Yeah.
situation. But coming back to your original question, the reason we brought it in house, I'd kind of set the scene originally in my interview process to say, if you really want to be successful at this, you need a team that is capable of handling it internally. It's all well and good having consultants on call, but until you can execute, you're going to be spending a lot more than you want to,
Hmm.
and they're not going to understand your business as well as the people who are there to do it for you. So
Correct.
they were two of the big calls there. Cost was a factor, of course. We mentioned that earlier. They didn't want to invest too much more given how much had been invested. But a lot of it was to do with how do we build that team out and how do we stand on our own and become self-sufficient and be able to move this product forward.
Yeah. Just sidetracking here a little bit because you like the amount of distrust or the confidence that was lost in the, well, you
Hmm.
say in the solution.
Yeah.
Did you basically have to resell like the whole idea of Microsoft Dynamics to the business again, or were they already exploring other solutions? Were they looking at Oracle or SAP, or did you have to resell Dynamics again?
They were never going to go back. So that was made very clear given the investment that had been made. It was we have to make this work. But I remember in the early part of my tenure, people would say to me, "Can't we just stand Oracle back up?" And I'm like, "No, it's
So,
Oracle is consigned to the past. We had modified that system to the point where Oracle didn't recognize it. So
oh
there were
wow.
many, many reasons why we had to move, and Dynamics was the choice. So we've we've got to make it work, and that was the
Yeah.
message that I kept sending back. Was there elements of reselling? Yeah, yeah, there were. There were. I remember being in meetings where people were talking about we need to do something different. I don't know, a new project had come up, and there'd be discussions where they'd say, "Well, we don't want to do it in D365," and I'm like, "Why?"
Yeah.
Because it doesn't work. I'm like, it does work. It does work. This is more of a user adoption problem than it is about the business processes that have been designed. So there was an element of trying to change that narrative and make
Hmm.
sure that people understood what the actual problems were
Yeah.
and addressing those problems. So confidence was key. Meeting with the stakeholders. I'll never forget those early meetings where they were just like, "It's trash. It doesn't do what we need it to do," and
Yeah.
I was just like,
Yeah.
wow, okay. Well, how do I repair that? How do I show you that it does do what you need it to do? Your people aren't ready for it. They're not trained. They're not able to understand how the system works. Because it
Yeah.
was a completely different experience for those people to Oracle. And they've been
Yeah.
used to it for so long. So yeah, that's where I would put
The,
a lot of the blame is on that change management approach. And you'll hear
yeah.
that from any consulting firm that change management is the most important part of any project.
Yeah.
Certainly true for us. That whole change management approach failed, and that's
Yeah.
what hurt us the most.
I know the CIO hired you and he knew what you were gonna achieve. Were you considered an ally by the business or a foe?
Great question. I would say ally. I didn't get any resistance. Let me put it
Okay.
that way. From when I came in, I'm trying to think back now. I was in so many meetings, but when I came in and started to really establish procedure, show that we could handle this and that basically the way they were tackling things was not the right way to tackle them, and there was better
Yeah.
ways of doing it. All people needed was visibility, visibility, understanding, and proof that we were actually making progress in
Yeah.
order to start to build some confidence. I mentioned earlier that there was particularly low bar, and that's true.
Yeah.
Because there was no stewardship, there was no understanding of how the system works. A platform update and the prospect of a platform update threw everything into chaos, which it shouldn't. This should
Yeah.
be. There was even someone said, "Why do we need to do platform updates?" I'm like, "Because you signed up to it.
Let's go
It's
back
part
on
of the
prem.
delivery. Yeah, it's part of the delivery structure that you've signed up to." But they were
Yeah.
like, "Can't we just tell Microsoft we don't want any?" No, you can't. This is part of the product.
Yeah.
So that's how bad it was. That there was such a lack of understanding of what this was, what they bought, and how they could utilize it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would say that they treated me as an ally because they were so desperately in need of someone to just take ownership of it. There's people in
So
IT who have been seconded, shall we say, or given ownership of this product, and they knew nothing of it,
yeah.
and they were really struggling
So
and didn't really know where to go to make improvements. So for someone to come in
yeah.
and say, "I'll take it," and I'll
Yeah.
run with it, and I'll do all these things, there was a
In
lot of
shining
relief.
armor.
Yes,
Yeah.
there was a lot of relief in there for sure. Of people just saying, "Great, someone else is dealing with this now." But yeah, the lack of knowledge is what, in hindsight, is the one that really sticks out to me. Like nobody knew when this went live
Yeah.
what it would take to keep it going. It's almost like they just thought, stick it in, never have to worry about it again. It's like, no, it's not the
If
way this
only.
works.
Yeah. Going back to, well, you hired an in-house developer, technical architect. You had described that the environment was about 50-50 customized versus standard, with a goal of
Yes.
being 80% standard, 20% customized. Now,
hmm
that's a tough journey. How do you make the case to pull out customizations when the business has fought so hard to build them in the first place?
Great question. I think a lot of this comes down to the maturity of the product that Microsoft now have. The way that they are gathering feedback from customers and actually creating features that address not all of them, but most
Hmm.
of the generalized benefits. We've seen a huge improvement in that over time. If I if I was to look at the modifications that were already in place when I joined, but the modifications we made since, a lot of them now have features that touch in those areas. One
Okay.
that we built, custom built, was net settlement between customers and vendors. Well, there's now a customer and vendor netting feature in there. So we'd like to move to that and do
Yeah.
away with the custom code. Over time as well, with the maturity of the product, the way the platform update structure has worked, and particularly the quality update structure as well, it adds a little bit of overhead to make sure that we are testing these things correctly and the business has full quality assurance. But I feel like that process is so strong now. And for me, where we get tripped up is where we've got our own custom code. So the more we push it towards vanilla and have that 80/20 principle, the
Yeah.
easier it becomes to maintain, the easier it becomes to take more platform updates more regularly,
Yeah.
and it just makes my life easier. I guess is
Yeah.
the real part in there. But there's so many benefits to getting it back towards vanilla.
Yeah.
We still encounter the can I have an additional field on the vendor invoice? We get that often. And there's a lot of questions about that, like what benefit does it provide? How does it fit into our overall reporting strategy? There's way more thought process about it right now.
Yeah.
We're still on that journey. That's a long-term goal for us, is to get to that 80/20 principle.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be able to give you a figure right now. I think we have made progress. I think we're more in the 60s
Yeah.
as we push forward. But a big part of this for right now is we now have an ISV that we don't really need anymore. We sold
Okay.
one of our business units a couple of years ago, and they were a big user of supply chain functions and project operation functions. And we
Hmm.
have an ISV that kind of bolsters areas around project management, we don't really need it anymore because that
You don't
division's
have the
gone.
business unit. Yeah,
So, and that takes a lot of customization out of our
yeah,
product. So
yeah,
that's one of the things that we are working on quite a lot. But certainly outside of that, our focus has been on which features can we take and what does it remove for us in that regard.
yeah. Fast forward to today.
Yep.
AI is now at the top of your agenda, um,
Yes,
and
it
you've
is.
and you've evolved from a D365 operational leader to AI strategist, if I may call it that. What made your leadership team see AI as the disruptor opportunity for a traditional industry like relocation?
Yeah, the past 6 months have been wild. We started out very much with the let's sit back and see what everyone's doing approach, but
Hmm.
very quickly we started to realize that for a very traditional industry like ours, if you look at our competitors and what we do, it's a small amount of providers. We all kind of do the same thing and offer it the same way. The
Yeah,
differentiator really is technology and service. So we're doing quite a bit around technology and changing some of our customer facing technology that we present to people.
yeah,
But beyond that, it's very heavy admin duties that we have. A lot of people processing transactions. Our CRO will tell anyone who'll listen that this industry is ripe for disruption and that AI and the capabilities that it brings, particularly with such a standardized approach for the way we do things. A lot of it is vendor auditing and processing processing invoices, invoice auditing.
yeah,
It's a lot of that type of work, that kind of heavy administrative work, which again, AI is really good at.
yeah,
So they're the things that really started to make us think about how do we present this differently? How do we look at our business through a different lens? And how do we start to deploy some of these efficiency gains that changes not only the internal user experience, but enables us to redeploy people to areas where we want to bolster more. Our focus is very much on customer experience. We want our customers to have the best possible experience when they engage with Graebel. How do we do that? Well, can we shortcut some of these times that we have right now? Does it take too long to get certain things done? Possibly. Can we
hmm,
alter that by using AI? Deployment of agents that just work continuously while our people focus on more value-added activities. That's kind of one of the big drivers for us. The other one is changing customer mix as well. So we relocate people of all ages, all backgrounds from all over the world. But
yeah,
we have a population of younger people now. So one of our main areas is relocation of interns for some of the biggest companies in the world. They tend to be younger people who don't want to talk to people. They expect things to be automated. They expect things to be seamless.
hmm,
So a lot of that customer thought process around their expectations and what they want to see in our solutions is helping to drive some of this as well. It's
yeah,
really interesting. You talk to our sales team or our customer care teams, and they'll tell you different things. Like some customers want nothing to do with AI, others want everything to do with AI. So it's that
yeah,
balancing act of how do we please everybody,
yeah,
and that's where we find ourselves today. But we certainly are firm believers in what Microsoft are doing with the customer zero journey. We are mirroring quite a bit of that in our own pursuit of AI and how we deploy that across our systems, how we unlock potential in all of our people. We
yeah,
believe AI is an enabler, not a replacement.
yeah. I think that's very strong, and I think it's a very good focus that you're putting the client central. Like, okay, what does the client want, and then
Yes.
figure out what you have to provide, rather than just saying this is our core industry, our core offering, and let's just focus on that. No, put your client central, and that's exactly what you're doing.
Yes, and that's always been paramount to us is the client experience. What are clients asking for? And it's been interesting to see some of the wording that comes through on contracts and RFPs because it is changing.
Yeah.
Some are, as I say, some are very much, we don't want any AI in any of our solutions, and you need to prove to us that you're not using it. Others are, where our expectation is that you already have AI and tell us how you govern it.
Yeah.
How do you ensure there's no bias in there and things like that? So
Yeah.
it's very interesting the different
So,
ways people are approaching it.
yeah. That that leads into the next question that I had for you, because you're running a citizen developer community, um, while also exploring cutting edge tools like computer use agents.
hmm
Like, how do you balance giving people freedom to innovate with the IT governance and guardrails that keep things from going sideways?
Yes, that is the key to everything right now. We've always been,
Yeah.
we want to be responsible with the way that we approach AI solutions in our company, and we've always put governance and security at the forefront of what we do. It's one of the main reasons that we adopted Microsoft, to be honest. Not only are we a Microsoft shop, all of our productivity apps are Microsoft. Our back
Hmm.
office is completely run through Microsoft tools, but Copilot provided that security immediately. Everything stays within our tenant, it doesn't leave. That was huge for us. And
Yeah.
having that governance framework straight away really, really helps us. So what we did in the first instance, really, Rory, was we broke this into two. It was the pro code versus the low code solution, and
Hmm.
how we believe that we needed to skill up in both areas. So still working on the pro code side. I wouldn't say that we've got a fully fledged team right now, but we have some knowledge in there and we have some capabilities. The citizen developer approach is brand new for Graebel. We've never done this before in that kind of democratization of IT. So
Yeah.
we partnered with a couple of different vendors. There's a company called Get AI who are based in Australia, and there's a company called Steep Meadow
Australia.
Solutions who have really helped. They're US based, Steep Meadow, but they've really helped us to educate people, but also start to build governance frameworks and really get to a point where we can execute. Getting that governance framework in place was key to us. Working with Get AI, building those environment structures, making sure that we've got DLP policies assigned, that we've got the correct access for people, making sure that not every connector that's possible with Microsoft is available for people to go and play with.
Yeah.
There were a bunch of controls we needed to put in place to ensure that we could do this right. So we ended up breaking it into two. We have, as I say, the pro code solutions, what we call our enterprise stack, and then we have the citizen developer piece, which we call our global innovation. And what we've done as a company, and this actually comes from the top of the company, our president and CEO has set this mindset of be bold. And the whole premise behind that is to really start to question what we do and how we do it. Don't be afraid to make suggestions. Don't be afraid to lean into innovation. You
Hmm.
know, and with the
Yeah.
citizen developer piece, we're kind of giving some of that power over to the end user base. Certainly not
Yeah.
everybody, but certain SMEs within divisions, we've given them the rights to go and build solutions, which we've never done before.
Yeah.
And I know that was the kind of one of the goals of Power Platform was to move it away from an IT centric function. And we never really got there with Power Platform, but with Copilot and Copilot Studio, we're getting a lot more success because I just feel like these tools are more accessible for people now,
Yeah.
and they can actually see direct benefits straight away by utilizing them. So that's what we've done. We've really set out that mindset, as I say, from the top of the organization. We've got structures in play now. Um, we're starting to see some really cool solutions. There was one that we built within the citizen developer framework. Sounds really simple. It's basically an agent that sits on a SharePoint site,
Hmm.
but it's so powerful. The
Yeah.
fact that you're changing that user experience for one agent that can survey data within, say, 20 to 30 different PDFs or documents within one SharePoint site.
Yeah.
Like that, in seconds, it can get you an answer back, as opposed to, can't remember which document this is in. I'm going to have to look through all of them to find my
Yeah.
answer. It just changes that user experience completely. And only when we did something like that and showed that we could do it and showed the benefits of it did people start to sit up and realize, wow, this can be super beneficial for me. It can save me hours of work just
Oh
by
yeah.
putting a prompt in to ask for a certain question.
Yeah. And when you show those things, people aren't concerned with, oh, this could cost me my job, like I'm gonna be replaced. People see like, oh, this is gonna make my job so much easier, which should be the whole intention of applying AI.
Yes. Yeah, and we've certainly run into that as well. There is still fear amongst our ranks that this is here to replace people.
Yeah.
And we've done our best as an organization to set out the whole stall of you've heard this adage before, but the people that we want around are the people who can leverage AI, who
Yeah.
can adopt it, who can utilize it, who are willing to do so. They're the people who are going to be successful in the future. And we've kind of not directly put that out there to say if you don't use AI, you're in trouble. That's not the message we want to put out there. But certainly those who adopt these tools and those who can show a proficiency with them, they're the ones who are
Yeah.
going to succeed in the new world. They just are.
Yeah.
It's a natural, and every industry is saying the same thing. So we're no different in that regard. Um, but yeah, we've still got that fear factor running through our company. I think showing things like this has really helped to lessen that
Yeah.
because I often feel that technology for some people is the barrier. I can't possibly use that. When we did D365, I'm sure there were a lot of people at the time who said, I only know Oracle. I cannot be retrained to use something different, and I'm not willing to do that.
Yeah.
Same with AI. A lot of people are terrified by it because they just don't understand it. They don't know how it can benefit them. And until you start to show them, you know, you could use it for anything.
Yeah.
Put a meal plan in there. There's some things that I often talk to people about and make it non-work related. Say, have you ever tried putting a meal plan in there? And it just blows their mind. You,
Yeah.
you talk about something that they can do in their everyday life, gets
Yeah.
them thinking a little bit more as to, I could actually utilize this for anything. And then it becomes more work related. How could you use it at work?
Yes.
You know, do you struggle with certain things? Could you use it for coaching? You could do it for anything. So that's been it's worked for me.
That,
I'm not suggesting it'll work for everybody and different industries, different personalities, but
yeah.
it's certainly that show the people what it's capable of doing and having a use case like we've got that we've demonstrated across um, multiple meetings now. It starts to get people more comfortable with it, and I think that's where you've got to meet people is make it relevant to them, make them feel like it's helping them with something.
Yeah. And that's why your citizen development community is such a powerful thing to have
Hmm.
because they're a lot closer to the business. They're
Yes,
thinking in business processes, and once they've got that mindset, like, oh, how could I use AI, LLM, they then start coming up with a solution. IT can't possibly be close enough to the business processes to come up with
hmm,
all the innovations. The users will,
exactly.
and
Exactly, and
it's
that's
very
what we want to
powerful.
hear more of. Is I've heard our CEO say this before as well, and I really like it. The greatest innovation from our company won't come from the C-suite; it'll come from someone who's lower down the organization,
Yep.
and that's where you need to start thinking: is how do you give them a platform where they can have these thought process that they can show that there's something different, there's a different level of thinking, it's a different way of thinking,
Yeah.
and again, not to be ageist, but a lot of young people come into organizations nowadays and just they see archaic structures, and it's how do you utilize some of that thinking. Not all of it can be achieved, some of it will
Yeah.
be completely unrealistic, but how do you tap into that and say they see something different, what do we
Yeah.
do with it? Can we take a different perspective on the way we do things today? It's something that I've thought about as well with, again, a very traditional um, industry like ours. Do you bring someone in from a completely different industry and let them look at it? You
Yeah.
know, if we bring
Yeah.
in I don't know, a new, say I leave the company and someone comes in my place, but they come from a completely different industry, which I did. You look at things differently. You don't
Yeah.
look at it as I'm a relocation specialist who's worked in this industry for countless
Yeah.
years. You look at things differently and you challenge it. And sometimes I think that's what it takes.
Yeah. Nah, and in my line of work, um, I see that all the time as well. you pick someone who's been in the same industry, the same company, the same industry that the new
Yep.
employer will be as well.
Hmm.
It's gonna be like, oh, this is how it works in the industry. But you pick
Yes.
someone from outside of it,
Hmm.
they're gonna ask questions that no one else asks, and that will
Correct.
open up new ways of thinking.
Correct.
Yeah,
And that's what we need to get more of. And it's one of the things that we're trying to achieve with what we're doing with the citizen developer community. It's very much how do we tap into
yeah,
that challenge, that questioning mentality of why do we do it this way? Have we ever thought of doing it a different way? And how
yeah,
do we get more of that, generate more of that conversation internally in the organization?
yeah. I had one more question left for you, which
Sure.
is related to this one because something that you mentioned when we were speaking offline. You mentioned you were once in a room with 12 or 14 companies in your alliance, and only two had done anything with AI.
Yeah.
And these are big organizations. What's holding everyone else back, and how are you addressing those things differently?
Yes. I remember that call. It was very interesting. So I think a lot of it comes down to risk appetite. There's a lot of companies out there. Again, we work in a very traditional, you know, standardized industry
Hmm.
where we think it's ripe for disruption, but other people may say it's always going to be this way, and it's always been this way.
Yeah,
And AI can be seen as a fad. There's a lot of scaremongering out there as to what it can actually do and how dangerous it could be, which I completely agree with. Some aspects of AI are very, very dangerous, and that's where responsible AI and governance and guardrails become even more important. But
hmm,
I think a lot of people just don't know where to start. I honestly think it's that simple, Rory. I've been in so many meetings and so many discussions with people where they're like, AI is this huge thing, it's overwhelming, and I don't know where to go. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to put a pin in the ground and just say, I'm starting here
yeah,
because it could go everywhere and it can do everything, really. So that's where I think a lot of the problems stem from. And I've actually been working with Rachel Proffer from Microsoft.
yeah,
She's coming to, you mentioned Dynamics User Group earlier. We have a Dynamics Con regional event in Colorado in April.
yeah.
Shameless plug there for April 9th. If anyone in Colorado wants to come along, it'll be a lot of fun. But Rachel's actually going to do our keynote address on this subject of where do I
Okay.
start? How do I get past that sense of I'm overwhelmed and I don't know where to go? But I think that's one of the key component pieces here. I remember late last year I went to a industry event uh, out in Salt Lake City, and I presented on the solution I mentioned earlier. That very simplistic, put an agent on top of a SharePoint site and let it bring that data back to you. It's not generating anything beyond its confines of what it can see. Presented all that stuff, and multiple people in the room were like, "This is amazing! Like, how do we do this?" And again, it's not that difficult once you know what it is.
Yeah,
It's an agent with specific instruction sets sitting on a SharePoint site. Sounds really easy from an IT perspective, but it's mind blowing from a non IT perspective. But showing that, it
yeah,
was really interesting, Rory, because there was a government worker in the room, and she was dead against it. She was very much like, we would block you from using any AI to do anything like this. And I challenged her and I said, why? Because all it's doing is reading the data that all of our people already have access to and can read anyway.
yeah,
It's just presenting it back differently. But it was very interesting to hear that mindset because she was dead against it. And it's not her per se, it was the government's mentality of AI is bad, can't be used. But when I started to challenge it and say, well, everyone's got access to this already, it's only presenting the information back that, if I went and looked through all these documents, I'd have to put the same information together and provide a response.
yeah,
It's just shortcutting that whole process. So I think there's misconceptions out there. I think there's fear. Let's be very honest about that. There's a lot of
yeah,
fear, but I think there's also that whole misconception about it. But the big one for me, and I've heard it from multiple people, is I just don't know where to start. There's so many things and there's so many facets to it. And
yeah,
I hear this as well. If I haven't done anything by now, I've already lost. It's like, no, you haven't.
Definitely
No one,
not.
no one's really winning in the AI game certainly from a client perspective. These things are, some of them are really easy to deploy. I think like I talked about earlier, putting
Yeah,
something on a SharePoint site, pretty easy. Some things are more complicated. You mentioned the computer use agent. We are pretty far down the road with that right now, but we don't have a fully fledged solution that I can just put into production tomorrow. There are challenges with that project, and we
yeah,
continue to work through them. We're actually getting the latest Cure model later today, so hopefully that addresses some of the problems that we've had. But
yeah.
it's, I would put it down to the key issue with that, in that context that you set earlier about the 12 to 14 companies who only two of them had done anything. I think it's just people feel overwhelmed. And it's this huge technological revolution that I think people think too deeply about.
Hmm.
And it's, where do you get those quick wins? Where can I deploy it and show that it adds value? And I
Yeah,
think leaning into what we've done with that whole Be Bold initiative and strategic outlook, that's where we've had a bit of success, because we've been able to break that down to a very low level and say, look at this. It can
yeah,
save you countless hours of time. So that would be my recommendation. Start small and then iterate from there.
yeah. If anyone is watching this and feels encouraged, like, okay, I need to put a pin in the ground and just get going, how could someone, apart from showing up on the 9th of April, um, how could people get in touch with you?
Yeah, they can hit me up on LinkedIn. I'm sure as you publicize this, there'll be connections on there as well. But
Yep.
yeah, I'm big in the Dynamics user space, so got many contacts that way cleverer than I am. So I can certainly make connections with folks on there as well. But
Yeah,
always happy to talk to people about these things. This is an exciting time for technology,
it is.
and it's super exciting in D365 as well, with all of the agentic solutions that Microsoft are working on. We've
Hmm.
got quite a few good things to look forward to, like the D365 MCP server is
Yeah.
untapped potential, and that thing can do so much. So really excited to get going on that one as well. But by all means, hit me up on LinkedIn or any contact details that you share, Rory. I'll be happy to connect with folks.
All right. Well, thanks so much for all the knowledge and experiences that you shared here on this episode. And thanks for being willing to have people approach you if they need some help with get going on AI.
No problem.
Um,
Thanks for having me, Rory. Appreciate it.
yeah, you're welcome. I hope to be seeing you at one of the live events this year.
Yes.
But for now, wish you all the best. Thanks so much, Stephen.
Thank you, Rory. Take care.
All right, bye. Thanks for watching another episode of Dynamics Compass. I started doing the podcast because in my work as a recruiter, I was speaking to all these Dynamics decision makers that had the same kind of questions. So I figured, well, I have a big network of Microsoft Dynamics experts. Why don't I just approach them, interview them, record it, and make all the answers freely available? So if there's a question that you really want answered that is Dynamics related, let me know. Find me on LinkedIn or write to me on rory@thegoodtalent.co, and I'll find the expert, I'll interview them, and make it freely available so you're informed and you can keep progressing your Microsoft Dynamics journey. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you have a great day.